The K-pop industry. What is going on with it? Why does it feel like it's all falling apart? And is this something new? Or has it always been like this? Hi, I'm Natalie, a girl who fell in love with K-pop like less than a year ago. And I'm someone who can't like anything normally. So join me in this video today as we talk about the history and culture behind K-pop through a perspective of a new fan that I just kind of want to know what the heck is going on with this fandom that I love. Before we get into it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we're going to start with the history of K-pop. The first generation of K-pop as we know it today basically starts in the early 1990s when the South Korean government decided they wanted to make their culture and media more known worldwide. There were 4 different phases of this promotion, let's call it, and it was called Hallyu, or also known as the Korean Wave. Phase 1 was Korean television dramas, or otherwise known as K-dramas, which is how I personally became aware of Korean media. Phase 2 was in the mid-2000s when K-pop really started its initial global popularity. And then phases 3 and 4 basically just take over the previous phases and just add more to the global recognition of their media. Now, each era of K-pop has something called a generation or gen. At this current time, we're up to the 5th generation of K-pop acts, groups, whatever you may call them. The first generation spans between the early 1990s and 2003. Some notable groups in this era include Hot, SES, and Shinhwa. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Which Shinhwa is also known as the longest running K-pop group without any member changes. They also had the best song out of these 3 because I looked up their most popular song of these 3 groups because I've never heard of them before. So I listened to Candy by Hot and Dreams Come True by SES, and to me, both those songs gave me very Disney Channel-esque vibes, but I also see the beginning stages of K-pop as we know it. Like, I see the inspo, I see the vibe, I see the vision, and they did that. Was it my favorite? No. Did I like it? Kind of. And then I listened to Perfect Man by Shinhwa. It was so good. It gave me, very much 90s boy band vibes, energy. I loved it so much, I added it to my K-pop playlist. So, the second generation of K-pop spans from 2003 to 2012, and it's considered the golden age of K-pop. As you also know, when I just talked about the history of K-pop, this is when phase 2 of the Korean wave really caught traction in these mid-2000s groups. Some groups in this era include Big Bang, Girls' Generation, and the Wonder Girls. This is the last era I'm listening to music from these eras because I didn't know any of these groups. I've definitely heard of these, but I've never really listened to any of their songs fully. So, for Big Bang, I listened to Bang Bang Bang, and it was as iconic as I expected it to be, from what I've heard. Loved it. So good. I have chills thinking about it. I listened to G by Girls' Generation, and I see now why JYP has Twice. As someone who found Twice first before Girls' Generation, I see the inspiration. Girls' Generation is just basically second generation Twice. And then I listened to Tell Me by the Wonder Girls, which, not my favorite, not my cup of tea. I don't know if I should have listened to a different song by them, or if their vibe is just not mine. But they weren't bad, just not my faves. Now, third generation of K-pop is probably the generation that you know of, even if you do not know K-pop whatsoever, which spans between the years 2012 to around 2017, 2018. Some notable groups from this era include the one everyone knows, BTS, EXO, Twice, and Blackpink. This is when these groups started globally getting real recognition. Even before I knew K-pop, I knew of BTS, Twice, and Blackpink. as well as one of my favorite groups from this era, which is 17. They are one of my top 5 K-pop groups, and I love them so much. Next, we have the 4th generation of K-pop, which is also the generation that I'm most familiar with. This generation spans from around 2018 to 2022, 2023. Some fun challenges of this generation is that some of these groups had a debut during the COVID pandemic, which could be a video for another day, but we're not going to talk about that really today. But some notable groups from this era are Stray Kids, aespa, TXT or Tomorrow by Together, and IVE, as well as my top 2 groups like number 1 and number 2, Enhypen and ATEEZ, which ATEEZ debuted in 2018. I don't know what part of 2018. So when I was first doing my research, I thought maybe they would be 3rd gen, and for some reason that felt wrong to me. But when I googled it, really they said 4th gen, so I'm just going to assume that ATEEZ is 4th gen, and if I'm wrong, feel free to tell me in the comments. And then finally, we have 5th gen, which is the current generation we are at right now, which spans from around 2023 to the present day, obviously. Some notable groups from this era include RIIZE, Zero Base One, Boy Next Door, and Baby Monster, as well as one of my new favorites, Zyzkers. So that's a little background into the generations of K-pop. Now, before I start this section, I want to start with a boo. Boo! We're booing the companies. We're booing K-pop companies. They all deserve a big boo. Boo you. Okay, now, in K-pop, groups are run by companies somewhat similar to how artists in the United States are mostly run by record labels, except for the fact that a K-pop company handles literally everything in-house, basically being a record label, talent management, production house, and a branding agency all in one place. If you know even a little bit about the behind the scenes of K-pop, you may know that most of the popular groups that come from this genre come from the 4 big K-pop companies, or one of their subsidiaries. We have HYBE, which has groups like BTS, TXT, 17, Enhypen, and New Jeans. SM Entertainment, which has groups like aespa, NCT, EXO, and SHINee. JYP Entertainment, which has groups like Stray Kids, Twice, ITZY, and NMIXX. And finally, YG Entertainment, which has groups like Blackpink, Treasure, Big Bang, and Baby Monster. Obviously, all of these companies have a lot more than just these groups that I've been saying. So I apologize if I did not say your favorite group from this favorite company. So, now that we got that out of the way, if a group debuts under one of these big companies, they are more likely to succeed because a lot of these companies have a pre-existing fan base. One example I can think of is how TXT, or Tomorrow by Together, when they debuted, they were basically branded as mini BTS. I was not a part of K-pop when that happened, so I don't know if that is something they are still called or whatnot. They are just BTS's juniors, so I've heard that phrase said to me before that TXT is mini BTS. These companies also have more money for things like promotionals, branding, and music-related costs, like hiring an outside producer to make them songs. They can also pay for better collabs, especially Western collabs is such a big thing sometimes in K-pop, as well as like music videos. Because if you have ever seen a big company's music video, you will know that their music video budgets are insane sometimes. These companies also have more industry connections than a smaller company has. On the other side of being a group under one of these big companies, an idol or trainee can face a greater pressure to succeed, as well as a lot more harsher training. Especially there's probably, like, let's say you go to an audition for one of these companies. If you're going to an audition for one of these big 4 companies, there's probably like I don't know how many, hundreds, thousands of other people trying to do the same thing as you. So I can imagine it's like a fish, a small fish in a big pond kind of scenario. These idols also have sometimes stricter rules and diets, well as even, in extreme cases, mental and physical abuse. So, those are the kind of pros and cons of a big company. And obviously, not every idol that is in a big company has gone through these pros and cons. Specifically, I'm speaking in a vague or broad lens. So if I'm talking about a company your favorite group is in, I'm not saying that they went through all these things. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. Now I'm going to talk about some smaller companies. Now, I'm not talking about like small companies. These are probably maybe medium-sized companies. They're just not the big four. And some are like KQ Entertainment, which they literally only have two groups, and that is ATEEZ and Zikers. I think they have Eden and Maddox. I don't know if they are solo artists or like production people, but the only groups they have are ATEEZ and Zikers. And FNC Entertainment, which houses a lot more groups, but two of my favorite is P1 Harmony and Ampers. And one, I love them so much. Artists in these smaller companies tend to have a more creative control with their music and a more hands-on approach. I have heard, like, because I am a fan of P1 Harmony and ATEEZ, they're both in my top 5, that a lot of these artists in these groups fight more and are heard more about trying to make their own music. Like I said before with big companies, just because an artist is in a small company or a big company doesn't mean they are able to make their own music or not. Like, for example, Stray Kids. They're under JYP, a big company, but they make most of their own music. So, again, I'm speaking in broad terms. And from what I've seen personally on social media, so keep that with a grain of salt, it seems like these idols in smaller companies have more breaks and vacations between comebacks or busy seasons. I've seen more recently, literally like Hongjoong from ATEEZ going to Coachella, or P1 Harmony members on vacation, ATEEZ members on vacation, whereas like Bang Chan from Stray Kids hasn't been to Australia to see his family in a long time, and Nikki from Enhypen, who debuted as a child, early teenager, wasn't able to go home to his home country of Japan when he became an adult. So it's things like that I have really seen as pros of a smaller company. But like there being cons of a big company, there are cons of a smaller company. Something like financial instability is a big one for things like living expenses to music-related costs, some terrible management, whether because they're incompetent or just are new and don't know what they're doing, and sometimes some unfair contracts. Like I said, there's always going to be pros and cons to everything. Not everything is good and not everything is bad. So it just depends, I guess, in what direction an idol decides to go. In more recent years, though, some idols, from what I have seen, it seems to be more solo artists or just artists that already have a bit of a fan base or money, start their own independent companies, with some Blackpink members starting their own and some EXO members starting their own, as well as a recent April 2026 debut with All In with his company SKS Entertainment, which is how I even became aware of idols starting their own companies. Now in K-pop, because you're under a company, you have to sign a contract. So these contracts basically nowadays last up to 7 years, which is why the term the 7-year curse exists in the K-pop culture. After a group's 7-year contract is up, they can decide to disband, re-sign, usually for less years. From what I've seen, I think it's more like 5 or 3, depending on how many times you've already re-signed, or you can continue, but with less members, as each member of a group has their own contract. But K-pop contracts were not always 7 years. In 2009, 3 members from the group TVXQ took their company SM to court, claiming that their 13-year-long contract was too long, restrictive, and that they saw almost no profit from their success. As a side note, I want to say, I don't know if this was back then or if this is still the case. If it's still the case, I wouldn't be surprised, where a lot of idols, before they even see money from their success, they have to pay back their training costs from when they lived in the dorms to, I assume, all the people and time they spent learning how to dance, sing, whatever else they do when you're a trainee. So I'm pretty sure that's still the case. I don't think that's really a toxic practice. I think it just maybe depends on how much money they charge you for that. The next year in 2010, the South Korea Fair Trade Commission made a rule saying that 7 years was basically the max of K-pop contracts. TVXQ and all the other idols and groups that I'm sure were under these terrible contracts are what is now called a slave contract, which basically means it's a contract that is unfair between idols or trainees and their management agencies. Now is something that I've been really wanting to kind of dive deep into. Because this is part of a big video, I don't know if I really dive too deep. I'm sure there's so much more I can do in such a bigger video, but I also just didn't want to get real sad. So one big difference I have noticed between Western artists and K-pop is this pressure to these idols to be perfect and always be humble. The amount of humbleness that I've seen just from being a fan the past 6 months is crazy. Like, even BTS, they're so humble, which I'm sure they are. Like, I'm sure they didn't expect to be basically the top group ever right now. But, like, I get to a point where I'm like, bestie, have some, like, confidence in yourself. Like, yes, you deserve that success. With most of the time, idols not being able to date, curse, and it just seems like anything and everything they do can just be picked apart willy-nilly by anyone. And they can't say anything that might make them look bad or has the ability to make people upset with them. The K-pop industry, it seems, perpetuates this environment where idols and trainees feel they have to be perfect or risk getting kicked out. As trainees, mostly very young teens, imagine being a very young teenager. Your hormones are going all willy-nilly, and you're put in this environment, sometimes for years, sometimes for even close to a decade, where you are in the sink or swim mentality and getting constantly judged and evaluated just for a chance to live your dream and become an idol and debut. If you get that, like, 1 in a million, 1 in 1,000, I don't know what the percentage is, chance to debut, then you have to deal with, most often, your company running your entire life. I have seen dieting to the point of an extreme unhealthiness to, like, controlling behaviors that can lead to mental and physical abuse in the extreme cases. After all this pressure just to debut, and then from your companies running your lives, then you have to deal with the K-pop fandom, which is at a level that I've never seen before. It is insane. With fans, and I'm using those in quotations just in case you are listening and not watching, fans looking for any mistake or imperfection to call these people out on, and sometimes feeling a sense of ownership over these people. Like, for example, I love Enhypen. My bias is Heeseung. We'll talk about that later in depth. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, I love him. Oh, he's so hot. Oh, he's my man. Is he my man? No. Do I feel like I will die if he dates someone? No. I am a normal human being. And then in some extreme cases, I'm not even calling these people fans because they absolutely do not deserve to be called to, invading these human beings' private lives, as well as breaking into their homes and stalking them. And when things like this happen, these idols are expected to say nothing, do nothing, have a smile on their face, while their company handles the behind the scenes. And most of the time, what they do is a whole lot of nothing. Nothing! This very toxic environment, I'm sure, leads to poor mental and physical health of these, again, human beings. that all they decide to do one day is say, I want to get really good at singing and dancing and make people happy. So all they wanted, which, if not properly helped, can lead to the many idols that thought the only way out of a situation like this was to leave this earth, which is not okay. Not for them. Like, we all have our struggles. But for this fandom and culture to be that bad, that this hasn't happened just once. Multiple and multiple times. Stuff like this has happened. And what do we do to fix it, companies? You just send out a statement saying, bad, don't do that. No, you should have like a brain and realize that people, even though they are famous, deserve a private life. Yes, you crazy people that already don't know and think that stalking people is fine because you like their music. Bad on you. Here's a slap on the wrist and off you go. So, tell I'm really passionate about this part. I could keep going. But also this hasn't really been scripted. This part, I'm just riled up a little bit. So, now that we have the history and the culture of K-pop down, now I really want to talk about why I kind of wanted to make this video. All this was like a precursor to, I just wanted to know the history and culture of K-pop. And now I want to talk about examples of when some of these idols left their groups and why. I wanted to see if it was something normal that has been happening recently that I feel like it's happening all the time of people leaving, or if something new was going on. So I came up with some notable examples. I tried to do one per generation, except it was kind of hard to find a first gen one that I really wanted to talk about. So we don't really have a first gen one. As well as one main one that I'm sure you could guess already we're going to talk about that really affected me, that we will talk about later. So before we start talking about these exits, I want to say sometimes companies are not very forthcoming, shocker, about why these idols left these groups. More on the old ones, we kind of can know why now that time has passed. Maybe these artists aren't in the industry anymore and they can actually come out and say why they left. But especially more with these recent ones, I tried to do my research, but take it with a grain of salt, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. So we're gonna start with our first one. First, we have Sunmi from the 2007 group, the Wonder Girls. In early 2020, why do I keep doing that? In early 2010, so about 3 years after their debut, it was announced by JYP Entertainment that Sunmi would be leaving the group to focus on her education. She later came out and said basically that the busy schedule and losing her spark for performing is one of the reasons also why she decided to take a break. I'm sure she wanted to go to school, but I'm sure that wasn't her only reason. She was probably just overwhelmed and needed a break. So, 2 years later in 2012, she came back to JYP to train. But there was no news really if she was going to come back to the group. In August of 2013, she officially debuted as a solo artist with her song 24 Hours. I listened to it, and like I was not really a fan of the Wonder Girls song, I was not really a fan of this song. So maybe just their vibe. I know it's a very iconic group, so I'm very sorry. But it's just not my vibe. So, finally, in 2015, it was announced that she would be returning to the Wonder Girls. They had kind of gone on like a 2-year hiatus and were coming back. So she was coming back with them. And now she also had co-writer and co-producer credits on some of their music. Sunmi stayed with the Wonder Girls until they disbanded in 2017 after both her and another member did not re-sign their contracts. I didn't really look up how many members there were. So I guess maybe the rest of them or the company decided to quit the group. In March of that year, 2017, she signed with Makis Entertainment, which later is now named Abyss, where she had more freedom, she said. and she's still with them today and has a very popular solo career. And I'm sure her other music is very good, but maybe just 2013 girl group is not my vibe. I don't know. So next we have a big rabbit hole. At least I feel like I fell down a rabbit hole. This one is also a little weird because there are multiple stories involved, multiple members involved, as well as some more recent stuff. So technically, maybe some of these members haven't really left, but in my opinion, they probably will. So we're going to be talking about EXO. EXO debuted in 2012 with 12 members, separated into EXO-K, who sang their music in Korean, and EXO-M, who sang their music in Mandarin, which, new knowledge for me, I didn't know that. In 2014, one of the members, Chris, left after filing a lawsuit against SM, followed by another member, Luhan, later that year. They wanted out of their contracts, citing unfair treatment, poor health, and unfair profit distribution. They later settled their case, but their contracts were still intact until 2022, with SM basically contracting out their management, but those members still had to give SM a share of their profits since they were still under their contracts. We're going to take a little sidetrack and talk about EXO's contracts, because if you remember in our little contract part, contracts after 2010 were supposed to be 7 years. And as you can tell, EXO debuted in 2012, and then all these contracts are until 2022. If you do the math, that's 10 years, bestie. That's more than 7 years. So how was that possible? From what I did a little bit of research, because I didn't realize that when writing the script. Apparently I can't do math. It seems like that maybe at this time, maybe they signed these contracts in 2011 since they debuted in 2012. I don't know. Maybe at that time the rule wasn't as strictly enforced as it is today, or because this group has Korean and Chinese members and they cross promote between different countries. There was this loophole. It could be longer. I don't know. So just something to think about. So both Chris and Luhan, after their settlement with SM in 2016, both left the group officially. I guess before that they were on hiatus, probably. After leaving EXO, Chris had a good solo career, I guess, until 2021, when he was arrested and charged with rape, and is now spending 13 years in prison. Off you go, sir. And Luhan, after leaving EXO, has had a very promising solo career as well as an acting career, even though it seems like he hasn't really been active since like 2019, 2020, according to the Wikipedia of his discography and filmography, unless it is very not updated. So now, before the previous EXO lawsuit was even settled in 2015, one of the members, Tao, filed another lawsuit against their company, SM Entertainment. I didn't say entertainment correctly. He claimed the same thing as the previous lawsuit: unfair treatment, poor health, he wanted out of his contract, unfair profit distribution, things like that. But he didn't want to settle, so he fought it in court, and he lost. The court said that his contract did not violate his rights and would be upheld till 2022. That's why I've kind of like, it's kind of weird. Their contract was 10 years long, but also the court said it was fair. I also read something that they had legal counsel when they signed their contract, so maybe that's also a way they won, just being like, hey, you had a lawyer read it and you still signed it, so that may be on you. I don't know. So after leaving EXO, Tao debuted as a solo artist in 2015, and in 2018 he established his own agency called L Tao Entertainment. Now, this next member we're going to talk about, we're still in this EXO rabbit hole. I think technically he has not left, but he basically has in a way. It's kind of confusing, and not really being a part of the EXO fandom, I'm kind of confused as well. So let's get into it. So in 2017, it was announced that one of the members of EXO, Lay, would not participate in their upcoming album due to conflicting schedules with his solo work, which I have never seen anything like that. Am I that well versed in K-pop? Not really. I like my groups and I stay in my little bubble, but I've never heard of that. So a little strange to me. So from then on, 2017 to around when their contracts ended in 2022, member Lay has really been in and out of the group. He just kind of comes and goes, which again, kind of strange. I'm not calling him out. I just think it's weird. Like, he's just kind of like, oh, I'm going to be busy in China, so I'm going to not be in the group. And then when I'm free, I'm just going to hop in and, like, be a part of this group. So it's just, I'm surprised SM just didn't, like, let him out of his contract or do something like they did, where they are like, okay, you can go solo in Korea or in China and just give us some of your profits, but you don't have to, like, come back to XO. Was he, like, a member everyone loved? Let me know, because I just think it's a little strange. So like I said, he hasn't really officially left XO, at least from what I know, but he did not re-sign a contract with SM after they expired in 2022. Today, Lay has a very successful career in China, as well as his own company, Chromosome Entertainment Media. Now, this is the most recent one, and I'm pretty sure it hasn't really been fully resolved, not dissolved. In 2023, members Chen, Baekhyun, and Zoomin filed to terminate their contracts. And I had to Google this because in this whole thing, it's like all their contracts end in 2022. So it's like, okay, 2023. So apparently they re-signed their contracts in 2022. So less than a year later, they came out and were like, we want out. So they wanted out of their contracts. It seems like they came to some kind of settlement where they could still be with the group under SM, but solely they could be under their own company that they made. But then they came back to court with the three members. SM this time filed against them, saying that they weren't giving them their share of the profit. And then, I don't know when this happened, but the three members also filed a criminal case against SM executives, accusing them of fraud. I don't know if that happened. It had to happen after they settled. Maybe they did that in retaliation of SM filing against them. But all of their cases ended in a dismissal or no charges, leaving basically these three's future in the group unknown. I'm pretty sure it probably means they're not in it any. But at this time, they are only listed as inactive, but they were not part of the group's 2026 comeback. This trio is also known as CBX, and like I said earlier, they settled with SM before, basically saying them as a trio, it was still under SM, but them solely was under their own company that they started called INB 100. But the trio group CBX is a part of the lineup for something called the Dream Concert in Hong Kong sometime later this year. So I'm a little confused, but they all have their own really good solo careers. I have music on my playlist by, I hope I'm saying his name right, Baekhyun, and didn't even realize it. I think I have Elevator on my playlist, which that song is good. I love it. And I've heard of Chen before. He has a really good voice. Like, I've seen them in EXO stuff before. But anyways, that was the EXO rabbit hole. Now we have a K-pop exit that made me kind of really sad when I was looking into it, and that is Seunghan from RIIZE. Now, RIIZE is a 5th gen group, and they debuted in 2023 with SM Entertainment. And I promise, I did not mean to put SM kind of on blast in this section of the video. I just kind of picked exits that are groups that I've somewhat heard of / listened to music of, or just ones that I thought were notable, and I didn't realize till researching that RIIZE and EXO were under the same company. So sorry. But the same year as their debut in November of 2023, member Seunghan was put on an indefinite hiatus after photos leaked prior to debut of him kissing a woman in bed and smoking a cigarette. The same day, he came out with an apology, and SM came out and said the photos were severe defamation and that they would be taking legal action. After that statement, SM was basically silent on anything to do with Seunghan, as well as any about the case since that day. After 11 months of an insane hiatus that he did not need to be on, it was announced in October of 2024 that Seunghan would be returning to RIIZE finally. After that announcement, many South Korean fans, I have chills covering my body right now because I'm so upset, protested his return, citing that he had broken their trust and damaged RIIZE's reputation. That night, over 1,000 funeral wreaths were put up at SM Entertainment headquarters, as well as trending social media hashtags and even death threats. What did he do? Kiss a woman and smoke? Besties, it got to the point that 2 days later, they reversed their decision and Seunghan officially left the group. I'm smiling, but I'm not happy. Many fans on his side criticized SM for caving to the bullying and toxic cancel culture, as well as stating that his hiatus was unfair punishment in the first place, which I agree with. What is going on with you, besties? All he did was maybe have sex with a woman and smoke. What? I'm sorry, I'm going off script because that's ridiculous. Okay. Since leaving RIIZE, Seunghan is still with SM and debuted as a solo artist in 2025 and changing his stage name to this. I'll put it on the screen, but it's still pronounced the same. I actually already have heard a song by him. It's not on my playlist, but I have heard of it before. I didn't know. I will say I feel kind of guilty because you can't really see it because it's been blocked basically everywhere, but I did like months ago a video reacting to RIIZE, and back then I just did like a quick little deep dive, and all I saw was like, oh, he left because of some like photos and videos that came out prior to his debut. So I thought he like assaulted a woman. Bestie, this is all he did? He kissed a woman and smoked. I feel kind of guilty, and now I feel real bad for him. I'm sure he's doing great. At least I hope he is. So I love you, bestie. I hope you are doing well. Don't let those crazy people get to you. Now we have the last one, which still makes me sad to think about, to talk about, for it to be real. But it's been like 2 months now. I don't think we're getting my bestie back. So this departure is what I call my first K-pop heartbreak. Enhypen is my favorite group, and Heeseung is my bias of Enhypen. I love that man so much. Now, Heeseung is from the 2020 group Enhypen, which was formed through the competition survival show Island, which was basically made for Heeseung to debut. So, I'm doing great. Out of nowhere, on March 10th, 2026, it was announced that Heeseung would be staying under the company B-Lift, which is a subsidiary of HYBE, as a solo artist, but would be leaving Enhypen effective immediately. Now, imagine this. I'm asleep. I live in the United States, Eastern Standard Time, which is about like 11 hours behind Korea. And it's like 4 in the morning. I get up to pee. I bring my phone with me. First mistake. Second mistake, I check my Instagram. What do I see on my Instagram? The first thing I see at 4 in the morning? Heeseung leaving Enhypen. That really ruined my day. I cried on my couch at 5 in the morning and then had to go to work. So, I had a great March. Since Heeseung's departure, there has been a lot of speculation for the suddenness of him leaving. The fandom is kind of split into 3 at this point, where people are OT7, people are OT6, people are, I don't know what the third one is, but the whole fandom is a mess, as this being the only departure I am actually in the fandom for. I had to take a break from social media because I was seeing a lot of things and I didn't know what was true, didn't know what was false, just didn't want to see it anymore because it made me sad. So I am doing great. There's also a petition with over 2 million signatures signed asking the company to let Heeseung do both solo and be a part of Enhypen if he wanted. Whether it was really his decision like we were told, or not, we may never know. But with Enhypen's contract ending next year at some point, it really makes me think about what the future of this group is. This is all speculation, but in my brain, it makes me think either that they know already Enhypen was not going to re-sign their contracts, so they just took Heeseung's contract and made him re-sign, so they have him maybe for another 7 years and just be like, here you go, bestie, now you're solo. Maybe earlier than you wanted, but it was going to happen anyways. That's kind of how I think it is, because also a lot of the members have been mistreated by the company, so it makes me really wonder if they're going to resign in 2027. I really hope they do, because I love them. They're my favorite group. But now that my eyes have been opened because of this departure, I'm really using my noggin. And that is what it is telling me right now. I could be totally wrong and off base, but that is what I think. My nose is so itchy. Since Heeseung left Enhypen, it was announced on March 30th that they would be doing a new world tour, which again left people wondering if he was supposed to be a part of it or not. This tour also starts in Seoul, I think tomorrow, soon. Probably by the time this video is out, their tour has started. So Heeseung has now changed his stage name to his American name, Evan, and has been announced as an artist at this year's upcoming KCON in August in LA. And if I had money and was not broke, I would love to go see my man, but sadly I cannot. But yay, bestie! I support you and I support the boys. So I love you all. I just want them all to be happy. And this month has been really hard because we're like it's been almost 2 months now. This is not part of my script, but I've never been parasocial about a group as much as I was about Enhypen. Like, I really did not see that coming. I had just seen a movie the last weekend. I was so happy. My family, I dragged them with me. They really liked it. We started watching Island. We got to episode 4. And then like 2 days later, Heeseung just randomly leaves. And I haven't even been able to watch Island since then. So maybe it's for the best I haven't watched that show, because I know it traumatized them. I'm going off script now. Now it's time for the outro. So, seeing K-pop as an outsider before I really fell deep into this genre, I had vaguely heard about K-pop and the fandom and the companies kind of having toxic practices, but I was a little bit ignorant as to what that meant. I mean, every industry has its toxicness. The model industry, the acting industry, everything has its goods and its bads. So, after becoming a real big K-pop fan, because I can never like anything normally, I lived in this ignorant bliss for about 6 months until, you guessed it, March 10th, 2026. So, for the good and the bad, my eyes have been opened to some of these practices that these idols go through. And it's honestly kind of hard to know where to stand as a fan that wants the best for these people. It's very much a catch-22 where these people and their music has given me such a joy in one of the darkest times of my life that I could really get emotional about it. But also having to remember what some of them go through every day, sometimes for years, it's hard to know how to feel. I really hope one day the culture gets better, but it's been like this for over a decade with no really sign of change. I don't know, maybe there is change, but I don't know about it, but it's hard to change. I don't really know. This video isn't going to change anything. I'm no one. I'm just speaking out of my ass right now at this moment, so sorry about that. But I just really want these, again, I'm gonna keep saying it, people to live their dreams and live good lives. That's all I want. They make me so happy. I want them to be happy. If that means that they are going to date someone that is not me, that is fine. Hear that? That is fine, people. They can do whatever they want. They are people, as long as it is not criminal. But after these confusing thoughts, I want to end on a grateful note. I have really felt a love and happiness in my life because of K-pop that I have never felt before. I feel such a sense of joy with K-pop as someone who has always loved and felt so connected to music and has really brought me out of some of the darkest points of my life. So I want to end this video with a thank you to whatever thing in the universe brought me K-pop and these idols into my life. My life is so much better because of it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!